Hello and welcome to our next lesson. Today we are going to be looking at how different things protect your body, or different mechanisms in your body, and how they protect you from infections. In previous lessons we've looked at bacteria, we've looked at viruses, we've looked at protists, we've looked at fungi. Now we need to look at how your body defends you against these communicable diseases. So before we start, there's a rather gross picture on the board of a baby who's sneezed and there's all snot running down its face. What I would like you to do is I would like you to pause the video and have a think about why we make snot and why it's important. So you should have paused the video. You should have had a think about why we make snot. Snot, or mucus as it's more scientifically known as, is like flypaper. It lines our nose, it lines our trachea, and it stops bacteria and viruses and protists and any sort of pathogen reaching in our lungs. Mucus has lots of proteins in it that kill the pathogens. I don't like this word germs. We should be using the word pathogens. It changes green when we're ill, because the bacteria and viruses are green and they attack our cells and make the snot green. If you've got things like hay fever, you'll notice that the snot you produce is clear as opposed to being green. So today's lesson, I would like you to write this title in your book as you would for any other lesson: Protecting the Body. By the end of the lesson, you should be able to describe how the body protects itself from pathogens. You should be able to explain how white blood cells protect our body from pathogens. And you should be able to explain how the production of antibodies protects our bodies from pathogens. Now, the matter of fact is, and I'm going to put this in red because it's really important, there are millions, if not billions, if not trillions of pathogens around us every single day. So we can say that there are trillions of pathogens around us every day. We're surrounded by these pathogens, and if those pathogens happen to get into us and they happen to infect our cells or create toxins like bacteria do, they will make us very, very ill. Now, luckily, our bodies prevent pathogens from getting into us through lots of different ways. So we can say our body has various physical barriers that prevent pathogens from entering us. Okay? So our body has various physical barriers that prevent pathogens from entering us, from getting inside. And if we were at school, I would have given you this diagram to glue into your books. But because obviously we're doing remote learning at the moment, we can stick this to one side so that it's there. You can have a look at this on the PowerPoint. You can zoom in to read what each part talks about. However, we need to talk about some of these physical barriers. So the first one is the skin. The skin acts as a barrier, and it also contains something called sebum, which kills pathogens. So acts as a barrier and has sebum, which kills kills pathogens. Okay, so the skin has, it is a barrier, and it has sebum, which is an antimicrobial secretion, which kills pathogens. And next one is the nose. Pathogens can enter your nose when you try to breathe in, and luckily your nose has tiny hairs inside that traps pathogens, slash particles. So when you breathe in, any particles or pathogens in the air get trapped by the tiny hairs inside your nose. The next one is inside the trachea. The trachea, which is your windpipe, if you think back to when we spoke about that in B4. Your trachea produces mucus that traps pathogens. So the snot that we spoke about in the starter at the beginning with the baby, this is produced in the baby's trachea, in the baby's windpipe. So the trachea produces mucus, which traps pathogens, full stop. And the mucus is either spat out so that the pathogens are out of your body, or you get it into your throat and swallow it, where it goes into your stomach, and we'll talk about the stomach in a moment. So we can say that mucus is either spat out or swallowed. Okay. The next one that we need to talk about is the stomach. And the stomach contains acid that kills pathogens on anything we swallow. So contains acid that kills pathogens on anything we swallow. Okay. And finally, one that we spoke about back in B4, we also have platelets in our blood. Now, platelets cause clotting at wound sites, stopping pathogens from entering. So these cause clotting at wound sites, stopping pathogens entering. So all we've said so far is that there are trillions of pathogens around us every day. These pathogens are trying to get into our body. They're trying to make us feel ill. We have various physical barriers that prevent pathogens from entering us. We have our skin, which acts as a barrier and contains sebum, which kills pathogens. We have our nose, which has tiny hairs inside that traps the pathogens or the particles. We have the trachea, which produces mucus, which traps the pathogen, and the mucus is either spat out or swallowed, getting rid of the pathogen. If we swallow the mucus or we swallow food, our stomach contains acid that kills pathogens on anything that we swallow, and platelets cause clotting at wound sites, stopping pathogens entering. Now, these are the physical barriers that prevent pathogens from entering. In your exams, it is very frequent that you get asked about the physical barriers. If they ask you about physical barriers, these are the things you need to talk about. However, sometimes, sadly, these physical barriers fail. And when they fail, it becomes the job of our immune system to stop pathogens making us feel ill. So we can say, and I'm going to put it in regs, it's important, if pathogens pass the physical barriers of the body, comma, the immune system must destroy them. Okay? So if pathogens happen to pass the physical barriers of the body, it becomes the job of the immune system to destroy them. Now, this is where something known as white blood cells are important. White blood cells, which is our key word, can be defined as cells of the immune system that destroy pathogens. Okay? So white blood cells are cells of the immune system that destroy pathogens. And there's two types of white blood cell that you need to know about for GCSE. So there are two types of white blood cell. Okay? The first one, the first type of white blood cell, is what's known as a phagocyte. Phagocyte. And I'll spell this out for you. Phagocyte. A phagocyte. Now, these are white blood cells that can enter tissues and carry out phagocytosis. So, these are white blood cells that enter body tissues and carry out phagocytosis. Phagocytosis. So they're white blood cells that enter body tissues and carry out phagocytosis. Now, that is shown by this diagram here, and we're going to put that on our screen so that we can write around it. Make it a bit smaller, bet that big will do. Put it down here, okay? Now, phagocytosis is where the the phagocyte engulfs the pathogen. So if we just write that down first, and I'll explain what we mean. So our second keyword is phago. Let's neaten that up because it's not the best. Phagocytosis. Phagocytosis. Now, this can be defined as a process where phagocytes engulf, and I'm going to put that in a different colour so that it stands out, engulf / ingest pathogens. So what we've got so far is that there's two types of white blood cell. We've got a phagocyte, which is a white blood cell that enters body tissues and carries out phagocytosis. Phagocytosis is a process where phagocytes engulf or ingest pathogens. I'm just going to underline engulf or ingest because it's not really clear that that's a different colour. So engulf, ingest, okay? Essentially, what happens is a phagocyte will see a pathogen, it will move towards it, and it will push its cell membrane around the pathogen, taking it into the cell where it's digested by enzymes. The important thing here is that they do not eat the pathogens. If you say that they eat pathogens, then it's wrong. You don't get any marks on an exam. So I'm going to write down here in red that phagocytes do not, and I'm going to put that in capitals, and I'm going to underline it, do not eat pathogens. Okay, they do not eat pathogens. You must use the words engulf or ingest. So you must use the words engulf or ingest. Okay? So this is where the phagocyte pushes its cell membrane around a pathogen, taking it into the cell where it can be destroyed. Our second type of white blood cell, and I am going to need to clear the screen, our second type of white blood cell, and we will put number 2 up here, is what's known as a lymphocyte. Lymphocyte. Now, that is Lymphocyte. Now, a lymphocyte is a white blood cell that produces antibodies and antitoxins to destroy pathogens. So we can say that a lymphocyte is a white blood cell that produces, I'm going to put this in a different colour so it stands out, antitoxins and, in fact we'll put that in white and then go back to this colour, and antibodies that destroy pathogens. That destroy pathogens. Okay? Now, some pathogens, such as bacteria, produce toxins that make us feel ill. So we can say, and I'm going to put it in red because it's important, bacteria produce toxins that make us feel ill. Okay? Bacteria produce toxins that make us feel ill. And that's shown by this diagram. Okay? And we'll just add it in here so that we've got it and we can refer to it. But we are going to make it a lot smaller. So, pathogens such as bacteria produce toxins, and these toxins make us feel ill. Lymphocytes, so for example, if I add some writing onto these, this would be a bacteria, and this would be a lymphocyte. The bacteria produce these toxins that make us feel ill, whereas the lymphocyte produce antitoxins that cancel out the toxins. Okay? So we can say that an antitoxin is a chemical produced by lymphocytes that neutralize or cancel out / neutralize toxins. So if you get a bacteria in your body that's producing toxins that make you feel ill, the lymphocyte will produce antitoxins which cancel them out and stop you feeling ill. So we can just add underneath antitoxin by saying that antitoxins stop toxins making us feel ill. Okay? Now at the same time, lymphocytes produce antibodies that destroy pathogens. So our final keyword today is the word antibody, or antibodies. Antibodies. A-N-T-I-B-O-D-I-E-S. Antibodies. Now, we can define these as proteins produced by lymphocytes that destroy pathogens. Now, these work in three different ways. So we can add underneath here that these work in three. Do you know what? I'm going to rewrite that word in three different ways. Okay? The first way they work is that they just cause a pathogen to burst. So they attach to pathogens, making them burst. Making them burst. They can bind to a pathogen and kill it slowly. So bind to pathogens, killing them slowly. And finally, they can cause pathogens to stick together, allowing phagocytes to engulf them. So finally, they can stick pathogens together, allowing phagocytes to engulf them. So the second type of white blood cell you need to know about are lymphocytes. They're white blood cells that produce antitoxins and antibodies that destroy pathogens. Bacteria produce toxins that make us feel ill. Antitoxins are chemicals produced by lymphocytes that cancel out or neutralize the toxins, stopping us feeling ill. That's shown in this image here. Antibodies are proteins produced by lymphocytes that destroy pathogens. These work in three different ways. They can attach to the pathogen, causing them to burst. They can bind to the pathogen, killing them slowly, or they can stick pathogens together, which allow phagocytes to engulf them. Now that final one is shown on this diagram here. Again, that would have been given to you to stick in your book should we have been in school. So for the rest of this lesson, what I would like you to do, I would either like you to have a go at the questions that are on the PowerPoint at the moment. You could pause the video, write the question out in your book, and then either use the lesson notes that you've just made, or go on the internet and research your answers to answer the questions, or I have attached some questions for you to have a go at to the Google Classrooms. You don't have to do both, but I would prefer it if you did. Okay. However, if you just finish either the questions on the PowerPoint or the worksheet, I will be happy. So that concludes today's lesson on protecting the body. By now, you should be able to explain how the body protects itself from pathogens. You should be able to explain how white blood cells protect our body from pathogens. And you should be able to tell me how the production of antibodies protects us from pathogens. So, should you have any questions, you can ask me in the comment section on Google Classrooms, or you can drop me an email. I will see you next lesson. Take care.